So those are a couple of things. Like I said, I didn't used to really be proud of my degree, but nowadays, especially when you look at people struggling with student debt to the point that they can't buy a home,
Right, right.
and you think, even if your degree is in a field you're not using, you still accomplished that. You still
Of
went
course.
through all of that stuff
Yes.
and got your diploma, and some of you are still paying for it now. And while it may not be part of your ideal future, it is still something that you can think
You
about on
did.
those days when you've got something challenging that you're trying to go through now.
Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by my man, Audley Stevenson, the Odd Man.
Greetings and salutations. Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, where our goal continues to be to empower you to live your best audacious life ever. I'm thrilled that you take the time out of your schedule to be here and appreciate you for investing in yourself, essentially, into this bold way of thinking. Now, just like a skilled tightrope walker fearlessly navigates a thin line between 2 points, we're here to explore how you can boldly step into your audacious life and embrace the excitement of the unknown, just like our guest today. Maxwell Ivey is known as the blind blogger. He's an inspirational entrepreneur, author, and an advocate for digital accessibility and inclusion. And despite facing challenges with vision loss, Maxwell has risen above these obstacles and found his true passion in promoting positivity and empowerment. In today's episode, Maxwell shares his journey of resilience, positivity, and the power of asking for help, emphasizing the importance of adaptability and gratitude in overcoming challenges and achieving success. So now that we've got you all set, let's turn to our conversation with Maxwell Ivey. Enjoy. Hey, Max, thank you for joining me here today on the Audacious Living Podcast. It is such a treat and honor to connect with you this way. So thank you for making the time to do this.
Well, thank you for having me. As we talked about before we pressed record, both of us really enjoy having
Yeah,
uplifting conversations, learning
yes,
about other people, and
yes.
sharing what we have learned ourselves. So what else would I prefer to be doing today? I really can't think of anything. So thank you.
No, I hear you loud and clear. And again, I think podcasting provides such a wonderful opportunity and a great avenue and medium for be able to get your message out or take in other messaging or great life lessons and why I get really excited about this to talk about the things that matter to me in this case, audacity and how we can live our best audacious lives ever in spite of the things that and whether the obstacles or things that come in our way. And so having you to talk about your own personal journey dealing with blindness and so where you are now, I think it fits quite nicely. And maybe Max, the starting point, I'll just get you to sort of talk about what got you to this point.
All righty. I'll try to keep it short.
Okay.
um, I am Maxwell Ivey. I'm known around the world as the blind blogger. I live in Conroe, Texas, outside of Houston. I grew up in a family of Carnival owners. Pretty much all I ever wanted to do was to be part of the family business and run the Carnival myself someday.
Mhm, mhm.
I also grew up knowing that eventually I'd lose most, if not all, my vision to retinitis pigmentosa or RP. Uh, Despite that, with help and encouragement from my family, teachers, scout masters, friends along the way, I graduated from a traditional high school and college. I'm one of the few blind Eagle Scouts. I worked for the Internal Revenue Service until the mental health toll was worse than what they were paying me for, and
Mm.
rejoined the family carnival. I was lucky enough to work alongside my family for about 15 years. And then my dad passed away to lung cancer in 2003. And by 2006 or seven, we were out of the business.
Right.
And I needed something else to do. So I started helping other people sell their used carnival rides, because when you go out of business, you pretty much have to learn to sell your stuff. So that's what I
Sure.
did. I started a website called the Midway Marketplace. And this was 2007. I didn't have any talent, ability, or skills or money. And at that time, there wasn't any WordPress, Facebook, or Wi-Fi even. I imagine running a website from a 56K modem, if any of y'all still know what a modem is.
I hear you.
And so in order to get started, I had to teach myself to code HTML just to get my website online and be able to tell people what I was trying to sell so that I could make money from it. I also had to teach myself to recruit clients and set fees and write copy, eventually starting a blog, recording videos, and then social media started coming along. And people said, you know, Max, it's really inspiring the way you just take on the next difficult challenge with joy and do whatever you have to do next. And we'd like to hear more about that. We want to know what it's like to be a blind entrepreneur. So I started a second website called theblindblogger.net, which the Blind Blogger is a name people have been using for me on LinkedIn and Facebook for a while, because even now, most people don't have more than one blind friend or associate. So you tend to become that person in that community. So I was the Blind Blogger to them. And when I needed a website, they said, we've been calling it that for 2 years. So why not be that? And I was, and I am. Since starting that, I've written 4 books, 2 of them award winners. I share my personal experiences and the lessons I think people can take from them. I've traveled the country solo, usually on very tight budgets. I've been on hundreds of podcasts, taught people to be podcast guests, booked people on podcasts, and eventually I started my own show called What's Your Excuse? Where I interview people who've overcome adversity. As you know, I finally faced my fear of singing in public and sang for my podcast and at public speaking events, and have written some of my own songs now. And the thing I'm doing lately is I've discovered that all these years I've spent online as a serial entrepreneur has made me an expert on digital accessibility. And so I now write for 3 online publications as a paid contributor on accessibility and inclusion. I'm starting a new podcast called The Accessibility Advantage, because I believe we need to focus more on the positive benefits of including people with disabilities, as opposed to stressing the negative penalties and punishments and shame that go along with not being inclusive. And so, you know, here I am 15, 16 years later. I think I've finally found my one true thing, which is accessibility and inclusion, but doing it from a positive, non-threatening approach that seems to resonate with business owners and with podcasters. And basically, I like people to know that I'm really not anything unique or special. I'm just a guy who keeps moving forward, keeps trying the next thing. Sometimes it was my own idea. Sometimes other people challenged me to do it, and I did it. But here I am. I'm still learning. I'm still growing, and hopefully I'm still getting better. And hopefully today we can talk about some of the things that I do that got me here, like finding solutions, being positive, and asking for help.
So yes, and yes. A tremendous story. I mean, you know, you. What's really clear, Max, is as you're telling and you're sharing, it's just you just move, and you said it, moving forward, just one thing after the other. It's like, you know, they something might slow you down a little bit, but then it sounds like you just figure it out and continue that pathway forward, which is that in itself is a phenomenal lesson to people, because we all know that adversity is going to come in some shape or form. No one is immune to it. So to be able to adopt a mindset, okay, you know, let's keep moving forward, it's phenomenal. So I'm wondering, where did that start? Was that something you had to develop, or was it ingrained in you already?
Well, I think it was pretty much ingrained in me already. I like to tell people I have benefited from 2 very important aspects of my younger years. One, I lost my vision gradually over a period of years. So from one day to the next, or 1 month to the next, I really didn't know how much vision I would have, or what kind of tools I would have to use, or what adjustments I would have to make. So when you're constantly having to adjust the way you do things,
Right.
it makes you more flexible, more resilient, more willing to find unusual solutions. And then, of course, I was in a good school system where our special education people were there to help us solve problems as opposed to just pushing us through the system so they could get there so much a month from the government until we were too old to hang around there anymore. So
Right.
I think that really helped a lot. I like to tell people in my lifetime, I've gone from being able to read a regular print book or a comic book in a dark room to having to have a lot of light to having to have a regular size text and then large print and
Right.
then eventually having to use a closed circuit monitor to project the print on a TV screen, and then
Mm.
finally to audio books and braille. And so that's happened over many years, but that's the kind of thing that will teach you
Right.
that life is not going to be the same. So you better get used to adjusting to it. And I feel like most everybody that's listening to us has been through similar things in their lives, but they forget about them. They don't
Yes.
think about them, or they only focus
Right.
on the negative aspects. So I like to tell people, sit down and make a list of the things you've done in your life, big and small, that were
Yep.
challenging.
Yep.
Even if you don't think they were successful, the fact that you came through them in some shape, form, or fashion
Yes.
is something you can lean on as you go forward. And so I like to look back to things that went well, like my first trip to New York, where I was there 2 weeks and
Mhm.
never had the first problem. And then a couple years later, I went up there. I got sick while I was there. I ended up broke while I was there. I was almost homeless at one point while
Oh,
I was
wow.
there. But because I had built up a community of people online, people from different parts of the country provided me with the money and the resources to get back home to Houston, Texas. And a few months later, I
Wow.
was recovered and planning my next trip. So those were
Wow.
two vastly different experiences, one really great, one really awful, but they are both the kind of things that I look back on when I try to continue moving forward. The other thing that really helps me is I grew up in a family of Carnival owners, which I've already mentioned, I know.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
When you do what we used to do for a living, nobody cares. I'm not saying that to be facetious or because I'm bitter. It's just the honest truth. People do not care what's going on in your life. All they want to know is on Thursday or Friday, can I ride the Ferris wheel or the tilt-a-whirl?
Right.
Can I buy a funnel cake or a corn dog? And can I try to win a stuffed animal? It's all they want to know. Nothing else
Yeah.
matters.
Yeah.
So from an early age, you realize, hey, we're never going to have all the resources we want. Bad things are going to happen.
Yes.
Somehow, some way, we just have to make opening.
Yes. I love the exercise of sort of going, taking a stock of the things that you've gone through. And I think that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Because you are right, Max, is that people take it for granted what they've done. And you can go back to a simple like bike riding as an example. Oh no, at one point in time, for some riding a bike was something very, very difficult. They had to learn. But after they,
Mhm.
they mastered that and they're able to do it, they don't think about the journey to get there. They just, hey, this is what I do. And so I think that's a really, really good exercise to go through, because what you do is you're giving yourself credit and for your accomplishments. And I think that's great from a momentum building standpoint in terms of getting you moving forward. So I think that's a great exercise.
Yeah. And I think one of the worst things that's happened in our society is the lack of paper. I really think,
Mm,
and you know what, you probably think I'm saying that for entertainment purposes, but I sincerely mean it, because there's so many things in our life that if we could just take 5 minutes and sit down and actually
mhm.
make a list, like make a list of things that you've done in the last week, month, or year that you can look at,
Yes.
and or make a list of just one thing, like say every day, write down one thing that has already happened that was a positive, or
Yes.
one thing that you expect to happen today that's a positive. And you'd be surprised once you start making those lists how many of these things that you will find that you can be grateful for.
Yes.
There's an old expression that says, when you count your blessings, they grow. And it's an old saying. It's kind of funny, but it's true to a certain extent, because as we both know, the the things you focus on are the things you accomplish. And that's been brought out by people much smarter than I am. So, taking some time to get a piece of paper and write down things that you are grateful for or that you're positive about. And here's the really cool thing about making these lists is once you make a habit of making this list, then stuff is just going to start showing up and you won't have to make the list anymore.
Right.
I mean,
yeah. That's right. You don't have to think about it. They just come naturally, right?
Yes, you build that muscle memory, that emotional memory to the point where you don't have to think about it. Like when I was focused solely on helping people sell used amusement equipment, I once sold a double-decker carousel that had been in storage for 20 years. I sold it in 30 minutes. It left Vermont and ended up in Australia within 60 days, which is a huge accomplishment in the sale of any equipment, much less used amusement equipment. I didn't get paid. I never got my $25,000 I was supposed to get for that. And we were already picking out a car. So think about how bad that felt. And but because I had spent time over the years finding the positive, I was able to think, okay, I had a buyer for this thing in 30 minutes. That means that my network on LinkedIn, Facebook, and my email list is powerful. It means I actually can do this for a living if I have to and want to.
Right.
It means that these people now respect me. It got my name out there to a lot of people where people started showing up and go, "Hey, Max, can you find me something like that?" Or, "Hey, Max, I got something that's been in my yard just as long as that piece of junk was. Can you, my web traffic went up, my email list grew, lots of positive things. Oh yeah, I got selected by the Mutual of Omaha for an aha moment because it was a big moment in my career as an equipment broker.
Nice.
Now I've since been to 2 or 3 other careers since then, but those were things I was able to see because I had that emotional memory built up over years, first in the Carnival business, then as an equipment broker, as a website owner. And
I love it.
And that was why I was able to live through that moment without being emotionally crushed. So yeah, making lists, it seems really simple. And a lot of people are going to think that won't work for me, but it's like everything else in the personal development world. And I really think the worst thing that the gurus do is they make this stuff seem simple. And the truth is ain't nothing simple. Ain't nothing going to work for you tomorrow or next week. But you can pick just about any personal development tool you want. You could do meditation, vision board, law of attraction, you name it. If you do it for 30 to 60 days, the next time you need to depend on that particular thing that you've chosen, it will work. But it ain't going to work today, tomorrow, or next week. And I really wish more experts would go, hey, you don't have to make this a practice. You're going to have to make this part of your routine it gets to the point where you no longer think about it.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. It's got to be something ingrained into you, and because it does, it just almost magically appears. It's like, oh, it's here, right? And you're so like, okay.
I mean, how does Tom Brady throw a touchdown pass? How does Tiger Woods hit a drive?
Sure.
They've been practicing that particular muscle activity since they were 5 or 6 or 7 years old. That's how they do it, you know. And we have to take the sport. I think it's funny because the sports world has been trying to adopt things from the psychological and personal development world for the last 20 years. The personal development world needs to take more from the sports world because the muscle memory is very similar, to mental or emotional memory. And nobody talks about how you go about, well, a few people do, but it's not a big number of self-help experts that talk about building up your mental or emotional memory.
Got you. Got you. I want to talk a little about something you touched on earlier, and really, I'm going to use the word. I don't think you said it, but I'm going to use the word adaptability, because certainly you, over the course of your life, as you dealt with that gradual loss of your vision, you had to adapt as things went on. Max, first off, give me an idea of the time frame we're dealing with, from the time that you knew you started experiencing it till to where you are now.
Right. So I started losing a little bit of my vision when I was 5 or 6 years old. My family noticed because I was falling down more than the other kids and running into more stuff and breaking more stuff than they were. So
Hmm.
I that was when they first realized it, and it was gradual until I went to junior high school. And with men with retinitis pigmentosa, a large drop off in vision about the time you go through puberty is pretty common. My vision, it went down enough to where I was determined to be legally blind, and started to learning to use a cane, and started learning to read braille, and started learning to navigate places without the ability to depend on my vision.
Right.
And it stayed pretty much constant until I went off to college, and then it got worse. By the time I graduated from college in 1990, it was down to what it is now, which is light perception. I can see light, but only if I'm looking directly at where the light is coming from.
Mhm.
I have very little peripheral vision, and the light has to be fairly bright. For example, I have a ceiling light, and I may or may not have an LED light because I never know if the darn thing is on or not, because it doesn't talk to me like some of my other technology does. So let's say from 5 to 25, because it took me a little longer to graduate from college than it should have.
Got you. Got you.
which is, is another thing that, we talked earlier about not giving yourself enough credit.
Hmm.
For the
Hmm.
longest time, I really didn't think too much of my college degree, because it's not in the field I'm working in.
Got
I
you.
got a degree in political science.
Right. Right.
I wasn't able to gain admission to a law school, or otherwise I'd be doing that for a living. But the thing is I recently found out that of first time college students, which I would
Hmm.
have been the first one in my branch of the family to go to college, first time college students who have a disability, the graduation rate is under 15%.
Okay.
So if you just make it out with a degree, regardless of
Mm.
what that degree
Mm.
is
Mm.
in, you're in the top 15. You're in the top,
Yes.
like you're like 1 out of 7,
Right. 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 Right.
which
Right. Right.
which is a heck of an accomplishment once you
Yes.
know it. Like
Yes.
I often don't talk about being an Eagle Scout, because it's one of those things that's in the distant past. But only 3 to 5% of the boys that start in scouting ever become an Eagle, and there aren't even numbers on
Wow.
how many blind Eagles there are, or what the percentage is of people with a disability who started in scouts and completed to the rank of Eagle. We don't even have numbers on that. So those are
Right. Right.
a couple of things. Like I said, I didn't used to really be proud of my degree, but nowadays, especially when you look at people struggling with student debt to the point that they can't buy a home,
Right. Right.
and you think, even if your degree is in a field you're not using, you still accomplished that. You still
Of
went
course.
through all of that stuff,
Yes.
and got your diploma, and some of you are still paying for it now. And while it may not be part of your ideal future, it is still something that you can think
You
about on
did.
those days when you've got something challenging that you're trying to go through now.
Yes. No, no. And I think you're right. We talk about giving yourselves credit, and I think it's so, so important. You not take for granted that really falls back in the conversation gratitude that we just had, right? Like, in terms of being appreciative and gratitude of what you have, what you are, who you are, what you've done, what you've accomplished. All of those things matter. And so I think that's an important conversation. Max, now you talked about asking for help, and I think that's a really interesting topic I want to get into with you, because I myself, and look, you know, there's people out there struggling with pride and their ego and afraid to reach their hand out and say, you know, I need help because it might be seen as, you know, not tough, or maybe there's vulnerability issues. There's all sorts of things that can come out of this, but there are some real benefits when you talk about asking for help, aren't there?
Yeah, and I'm gonna make this easy for you, because at first I'm gonna tell you why I'm so good at it, and then I'm gonna help you and your listeners be able to be good at it yourselves. So
Good.
this is gonna be the best thing I teach you today. So y'all take notes now, okay? All
Awesome.
right. I grew up knowing eventually I'd lose my vision. So my dad, being a practical sort, said, Max, there's two things I'm going to teach you. These two things will really help you as you go along in life. He said, one, even if you can't see the person you're talking to, always look in the direction of their voice, because it'll make them think you care about what they're saying.
Okay.
And the second thing he said is, don't ever be afraid to ask for help, because you're going to need people's help. You're going to make your life harder if you don't ask. And most people are going to want to help you. And so I grew up with the whole other mindset. Like, I never knew that asking for help or opportunities was a bad thing, because there is also ego in asking for opportunities. So here's what I finally came to understand. When think about this first. When you do something for somebody else and that other person can't do anything for you but say thank you, doesn't that make you feel good?
Sure. Of course.
You know, when you carry somebody's groceries or take out their trash or watch their dog while they bring in their mail or whatever, it may not be nothing to you, but you made somebody smile, you made somebody's days easier. It makes you feel really good, doesn't it?
Sure it does. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So when you refuse to ask for help, you are robbing those other people of the joy they would have received from helping you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say it again, because most hosts ask me to say it again. When you refuse to ask, you rob the other person of the joy they would have received by helping you. So basically, you're making other people's lives harder and less joyful and more dreary by not asking for help. And this is the reason why, because there are so many people in this world, in the business world, in the content creation world, they have spent a lot of time accumulating knowledge, gaining experience, honing a skill or a talent. And the best thing you can do for them in their day is to come along and go, hey, I know you are the expert. I know you know all of this. I know you are the best at this particular thing. I really need your help. Would you please help me?
Yes.
And most everybody, and these are the three answers you will get. These are the four answers you will get. The first answer you get most often is yes, sure. Let's see when and how we can do that. The next answer is, I can't do it right now, but I do want to do it. The next answer after that is I could do this for you, but I'm not the ideal person. You should talk to so-and-so and I'll make the introduction. The last option, which happens very, very rarely, is I just don't have the time, or I don't want to help you, or I don't help other people. But basically, people are going to say no a very, very small fraction of the time. So when you ask them for help, trust me, they're going to appreciate it, especially if you do it sincerely. But there's one other thing you have to do when you ask somebody for help. If you ask them for help and they give you their time or their advice, then you have to show your gratitude. I don't mean just saying thank you. What I mean is you have to apply whatever it is they told you, gave you, did for you, because that's the most effective way you can show your gratitude for their help.
Wow. So that's a great mindset approach, rather, I'd say, because, you know, Max, it's easy for people to go, well, no, I'm, you know, the pride, again, I talk about the pride as an example, right? No, I don't need to ask for help, or I'm good on myself. But there's a part of this that, and you touched on that you're essentially what you're doing is you're helping people to be more fulfilled. You know, you do have people, you have people that are natural givers, as an example, who when they give, they like to give, they enjoy to give, and so when they offer and you say no, you're denying them of that joy, as you talked about. I think that's such a wonderful approach, because you're really putting the focus back on the other person, as opposed to it's about me and what I want for myself.
Exactly. You got that without me having to explain it to you. That's amazing. All right. So, all All right, so now you've mastered the bachelor level. Now we got to go on to the graduate level of what's called interdependent. All right. Now, so a lot of people can get to the point where they're okay asking for help, but the ego will really jump up and bite you when somebody comes along and offers to help you.
Yep.
Because the idea is I didn't ask this person, so the immediate response is your ego is going to go, who the heck do they think they are? I don't need their help. I'm doing just fine by myself. They should go help somebody who really needs their help. And, so the ego will really jump. So here's the thing. We ask for stuff all the dang time. We just don't realize we're asking for it. And here's some of the ways we ask, okay? There's prayer, there's meditation, there's a vision board. But here's some of the ways we ask that most people don't know. When we really struggle with something, it comes out in our daily conversations. People who know you or around you or have to listen to you complain, they realize that you're struggling and they may decide to offer to help you. When you post on social media, even if you're not writing one of those, I really need your help today, or I'm going to go out and run in traffic kind of posts. If you're just going along doing your everyday thing, there are people who are going to go, that person there is having trouble with a particular issue, and I'm going to offer to help them. We ask in lots of ways that we don't realize we're asking. We put it out there. Even if we're just whining and moaning in our bedroom, and hey, I do that myself sometimes, so I can use those words. I mean, like, okay, 2 years ago, on pretty much a daily basis, I'm like, I need to make more money. I need to make more money, but it needs to be something I'm already good at, something I can do from the house. How do I find this thing? So I'm running along on LinkedIn, and I'm using this example because it's a perfect example of how I screwed this up, and it takes a little while. Sometimes even the experts need help. Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
So I'm going along, and these people from audioi.com connect with me on LinkedIn, and I send them a little thank you note, which I highly recommend you do on LinkedIn whenever you have the time. And they reply back. They go, Mr. Ivey, we think you would be perfect for a position as a digital accessibility evangelist, and we'd like you to apply for the position. And I said, okay, send me the link. And they sent me the link, and I read the description. I'm like, okay, this stuff about reviewing websites and doing social media and recording videos about accessibility, I can do that. But this stuff about Microsoft products like Excel, WordPress, and Keynote, and I can't do that. And so about half the job I was good at, about half the job I wasn't good at. And I sent them an email, and I said, hey, I could do most of this, but not all of it. So I'd appreciate if you keep me in mind as a contractor to whoever the eventual hire was.
Sure.
And they wrote back, they said, well, Mr. Ivey, we think you would be perfect for us in some capacity, but we need you to fill out an application. I'm like, I'm not qualified. I'm not filling out the application. So we'll just fill out the application so we can get you in our system. So I did. And about 30 minutes later, I get an email that says, Mr. Ivey, we appreciate you applying for the position, but you're not qualified for it. Which I got a good laugh out of. And that subject came up in all four of my interviews up to the point of interviewing with the COO of the company. And we got a good laugh out of that every single time. But because I, did finally let them talk me into applying, I now am a regular contributor to their website. And because of my articles for their website, I've been hired by PHP Architect Magazine. And I've also been hired by Reviewed Magazine to do product reviews of accessibility. And my latest product review, I got paid to play with Legos.
I love it. That's
so
awesome.
This is an example where somebody came along and offered to help me because I was putting it out into the world that I needed more money. And something came along, and what did I try to do? I tried to talk them out of it.
Yes.
So the ego will jump up and bite you. This is why you have to have a process. You have to have a practice. So like when people offer to help you, you have to go, okay, I need to take a minute. And here's another place where putting the focus on other people will really help you when you have this ego problem about being offered help is remember, when we react poorly to offers for help, that means that the person who made the offer is going to be less likely to make a similar offer to somebody who really needs and wants their help. So if somebody offers show some grace, show some class, be a gentleman or a lady and say, I don't really think that I need your help, but I really appreciate your sincere offer. And if at some point I realize I do need your help, can I please contact you? And can we stay in touch? There are lots of ways you can handle it much better than go somewhere else because I don't need you. So remember that the way we respond to offers for help can cost other people opportunities to get help that really, really need it. So show some grace.
I was going to say that's another great example of putting the focus back on others. That really is. Because I love that. I love that. And I'm a big fan of the word grace. I got to tell you, Max, because I think it's fitting and it applies in almost every situation or circumstance or interaction that we have with people. Grace will always be the difference maker. So I'm really glad you made that point as well. So thank you.
Well, I've been blessed to be exposed to a lot of people who have shown it to me. And I hate to say this because it's going to sound sexist, but I have been helped by a lot of women over the years. So, and I kind of feel like being around women, from my grandmother to aunts to the women I've met who have also been online business owners, has really been a great thing for me in my life. But yeah, grace is an important thing. And my dad always used to say that a gentleman never has to raise his voice, curse, swear, or fight people. He said, you may decide you want to, but you never have to. And so I've always tried to approach things. He also taught me one of the things that really helped me, well, a couple of them that really helped me about asking. Back when we had a 7-ride Carnival and the only way we could fill out our calendar was to make a lot of phone calls until we found enough people that didn't already have somebody else. When I would get tired of making those calls and I'd go, this ain't no fun no more, he would say, Maxie, because he called me Maxie. He was a senior, I'm a junior. Yeah. He'd say, Maxie, if you don't ask, they can't say yes. Now stop complaining and dial the next number.
Gotcha. Love it.
So that has helped a lot as well. But really, it's just been years and years of practice of asking for help and opportunities and accepting. Oh yeah. I almost forgot that I told you that asking for opportunities also had ego involved in it. So we want to cover all the bases here.
Yes.
So most people feel like when they ask for an opportunity that they are showing their ego. They are saying, hey, I am a really great person, or they're thinking in their minds, this means I'm saying I'm better than other people. But the truth of the matter is there are most times when you ask for an opportunity, you're asking for that opportunity from people who need you to ask. I mean, let's use podcasting, for example, because it's a great example. If guests don't ask to come on shows, then hosts don't have guests. Hosts don't have shows. Hosts can't build audience. Hosts can't make money from affiliate sales, sponsorships, or selling their own books and courses.
Got it.
There are lots of cases like that where if you don't ask for that opportunity, they either aren't going to have the people they need, or they're going to have to give that opportunity to somebody who's even less qualified for it than they were hoping for. So when and a lot of times the great thing about asking for opportunities is quite often you can do it without any personal investment, because quite often you can do it through a submission form or a stock email. Quite often you can ask for those opportunities without having to invest a whole lot. So, but think about it that way. Think about the other person. Think about the podcast host that needs you as their guest.
Well, listen, as a podcaster myself, I totally understand and get it, right? Like what you're saying hits buttons for me, and you're absolutely right. And again, I just love, I love the whole philosophy around asking for help, Max, particularly around the focus of the other person, which it will challenge people's thinking, because they think of the other way around, but you're flipping that on its head and making people really understand it's not about, it's more about them.
It's not about you. It's not about me. It's about them. And
yes.
And that's really the whole point. A lot of times we just have to take the time and think about things to the point where we understand them a little better. And I was blessed to have this explained to me from an early age. So I'm very lucky, and I feel an obligation. That's one of the things that a lot of people aren't sure about me, is when I tell them that because I have learned these things over many years, I feel an obligation to share them with other people, as opposed to, most people think I'm doing this because I've found a way to get rich off of it, which I haven't. Because trust me, I'm not living in a mansion or being driven to and from work every day. I mean, I would like to test drive one of those driverless cars. If any of your audience knows somebody who knows somebody,
Put it out there. I love it. Put it out there.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing, putting it out there. There's a lot of things that people want to do in their lives, but they are afraid to say them to themselves.
Yeah.
Let's say them out loud. And sometimes we have to be tricked into it. Sometimes we forget ourselves and we say them before we realize what we're saying, and then they're out there, and then really cool things can happen. Let's go back to podcasting for another example. I started doing interviews in 2013 because I'm a blind guy who lives in the suburbs. There isn't any good transportation out here. I needed a way that I could meet people and build relationships that could lead to making, business accomplishments. And I couldn't do that any other way. And I discovered podcasting. That was one of those things where, I was putting it out in the world. I needed help. And a guy posted to my LinkedIn feed and said, "Hey, I'm going to do a show starting in a month. Every Friday, I'm going to interview small business people. Here's my link. Would you sign up for it?" So that got me started. But people kept saying, "Hey, Max, when are you going to start your own podcast?
Right.
When are you going to start your own podcast?" And I didn't really want to start my own podcast because I didn't feel like I could manage the technical details and still be in the moment to either record my own thoughts or have a conversation with somebody. So what I did, I gave them this answer. I started telling hosts, well, I'll start my own podcast when I find somebody who will take care of the technical stuff. So all I have to do is show up and talk.
Right.
Now, do I have to tell you what happened within a month? Can you guess what happened next?
You got the interest, like you jumped on.
Yeah. A really cool guy named Frederick Bai from Quebec, Canada. He calls himself a Canucker. I'm still not sure if that's a positive or a negative term, but since he used it, I'm going to go with it.
Okay.
And he said, "Max, I'll produce it and you just talk." And so we got started. We did the podcast for about 6 months. And then he orchestrated an excuse not to be there because he didn't feel like I needed his help anymore, and forced me to figure out Zoom and start recording content on my own, which I'm still doing now. But
I love it.
I put it out into the world that I would start a podcast when I had somebody to help me with it. And then somebody showed up to help me with it. And then I was pretty much stuck having to start a podcast. And then after I started doing it, I enjoyed doing it because all I had to do was talk. I didn't have to do none of this other stuff. I didn't even have to write a blog post or do the social media if I didn't feel like it. So, but that's the thing. And so, a couple of things that I've been putting out into the world over the last year or so is I want to check off my list being an international speaker. Mm-hmm. And there's an event coming up in Orlando called PodFest that I was looking forward to going to because I had been there a couple of years in a row before. Mm-hmm. But they don't pay your expenses to go there. And I was doing the math and I'm like, okay, Max, you really can't afford to go to PodFest. You can go if you want to, but realize your piggy bank is not going to like you when you get home. So I sent them an email. I said, I'm not going to be able to be there. Mm-hmm. Now, within 24 hours, I get an email from the Dutch PHP conference in Amsterdam saying, "Mr. Ivey, you may have forgotten about these topics you submitted, but we want to book you to give a keynote on overcoming digital accessibility. And we pay all of our speakers' expenses, and we will provide you with a travel agent to make all your arrangements." Wow. So this was one of those cases where first I had to accept that I couldn't do something, and then, take a positive approach to it. Like, okay, I know I have to tell these people no, but something positive will show up, something good will happen. And then, in my, I wake up at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning to go to the bathroom, and I come back and I check my email before I go back to bed, which I know is a bad habit. And I got these emails telling me that they want me to come speak. So,
Wow.
yeah, which is why I'm going to keep saying it until it happens. I'd like to appear on Sesame Street, and at least once I want to sing at the Ryman Auditorium. So
I love it. Just keep putting it out there, Max.
just keep putting stuff out there. Yeah, just keep putting stuff out there,
That's awesome. Max, again, I love the philosophy behind ask for help, putting yourself out there. Flipping it on his head is not about, there's nothing wrong with vulnerability. There's nothing wrong with asking. These are all wonderful things. I'm certain our listeners have appreciated that little lesson, and you've taught me as well. So thank you for that as well, Max. Appreciate the time. This has been some awesome time spent with you. I love the journey. I love the story. I love the fact that you continue to push ahead, regardless of what comes your way. Just figure it out. Be that natural problem solver to get to the other side of your challenges.
Yeah. As my dad used to say all the time when we managed to make opening, and people would ask him, Mr. Ivey, how did you do that? He would go, what, did we have a choice?
There we go.
Sometimes that's what you got to do. Sometimes you just have to convince yourself you don't have a choice. Sometimes if you can get to that point, like if you can get to that point where if you don't, that there's, that you can force yourself to believe this is the only option, then you find ways, then you find ways.
I love it.
I don't advise people to take any desperate measures. I don't advise people to spend money they don't have.
Sure.
I don't advise people to use credit they don't have. But if I hope that we've helped y'all today, and please, if you need help from somebody, ask for it. And it doesn't have to be you need them to do something for you. It can be you need them to educate you. It can be you need to hear what they think about your particular ideas. And remember, whenever you're going to ask for help, it's always best when you ask for help from somebody you already know or are friendly with. So nothing wrong with asking people on social media for help, but connect with them. Send them a few direct messages before you ask.
Establish a relationship is always a good thing.
Yeah, as a guy I used to follow on YouTube would say, you never ask a girl to marry you on the first date.
Good advice.
I know something. Well, look, I really appreciate my time here. We've had a lot of fun, and I think we've shared some very important messages with people, especially around asking. Look, I couldn't do what I've done without people like you who've given me the opportunity to come in front of their office audience. So I want to thank you for being part of my continuing journey and part of my continuing story. And I wish you all the best.
Same here, Max, and thank you for listeners who wanted to learn more about you or catch up with you. Where is the best place to send them?
They can go to theblindblogger.net. That's theblindblogger.net. Awesome. Or they can just send the email to justask@theblindblogger.net.
I love it.
Justask@theblindblogger.net. I don't want to ever be one of those people that you feel like you have to be ready to buy something from, hire, or book in order to talk to, because as you've seen from us today, a lot of great stuff can come from having friendly conversations with no agenda other than just exchange ideas, share stories, and become friends. So if there's something we've said you want to ask about, you want to tell me I'm the greatest, you want to tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about, either works. Just ask at theblindblogger.net.
I love it. Max, again, thank you for this. This has been awesome, and I appreciate you, man. Take care.
Thank you. You too.
As Maxwell eloquently demonstrated, the key to audacious living lies in embracing challenges, seeking support when needed, and maintaining a positive mindset. By recognizing our strengths, accepting our limitations, and continuously learning and growing, we can unlock our full potential and make a meaningful impact in the world. And if Maxwell's story is inspired and you'd like to learn more about him or connect with him directly, you can find his contact information in the show notes below, and I would definitely encourage you to do so. Thank you for tuning in to another edition of the Audacious Living Podcast. I would ask, as always, if you can share, or even give us a rating on your favorite listening podcast platform. It would be appreciated. It helps this platform to grow. So thank you in advance. Look, together we can reach all sorts of great new heights and do so by living our most audacious lives. So stay tuned for more inspiring stories, insights, and future episodes. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, show love to one another, and be audacious.
You've been listening to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by Audley Stevenson. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, be audacious.